Hi there, thank you very much for joining me on another episode of Love Code on YouTube. On today's episode, I want to talk about 12 important things to talk about before marriage. 12 things that you need to talk to your would-be life partner about before you actually get married. These are 12 subject areas I'll run through for you to make conversation on, right? If you haven't already discussed any of this, with your partner, you want to make note of them and just have a discussion around these areas. They are very important areas. So let's get right into it. The first one is obviously raising a family, which is what you're about to do. That's what you're about to get yourself into. So you need to talk about it. You need to talk about raising a family. What is this person's idea of raising a family? What are their family values? You know, what is important to this person when it comes to building a family or raising a family? What does this person understand by the concept of family? How many kids do you want to have? How many children do you want to raise together? Right? Does this person want kids, or is this person just okay with, you know, the two of us and our pets? You know, there's so many people who prefer that these days, so you want to be sure. It's not because one is good or one is not, but you want to know that you and the person you're about to get into a lifelong relationship with are on the same exact page when it comes to raising a family. You also want to talk about where you want to live. You know, what part of town do you prefer to live in? Are you the kind of person that prefers to live in a mega city where a lot of things are happening, or are you content with living in another part of the country where things are not as busy? You know, what are your preferences? So just talk about that. Are you the kind of person who is okay with moving from time to time if things change and you don't have a problem with that? Because trust me, things do happen in life and things change. So people will have to move, things will happen, and you want to be sure that the person that you're with is flexible enough if you are that kind of person as well, right? So the first thing is family. Talk about family. Talk about raising a family. Is this person just interested in having a relationship with you alone? Or is this person, you know, happy about raising a family with you? And when it comes to kids, you want to be sure about the number of kids you want to have. Because trust me, this does get interesting later on in life, because I've come to realize that men and women are not always on the same page when it comes to this. A lot of men just want one or two kids, you know, at the most, one or two kids. Generally speaking now. I'm not saying this is how it is for everybody, but generally speaking, that's what it is. But women usually want more than that. So you want to talk about this and be sure that you guys are on the same page and you can reach a compromise about that. The second one that I have here is faith. You want to talk about your faith. Now, because this channel is based on Christian values, I want to assume that everybody is a Christian. I hope I can assume that, but because I know that that's not the case, and some people do watch, you know, from different countries, people that, you know, are not even Christians. So I need to speak about this as though I was talking to a broader audience now, which is if you practice a certain faith that is important to you, you want to be sure that you are with somebody who understands your faith and who accepts it. But if you are a Christian, you know, the game is different for you. The rules are different. You can only marry somebody who is a Christian. Bottom line. So you can only marry somebody who shares your Christian values. You cannot be unequally yoked with an unbeliever. So you want to put that in mind and make sure you're not marrying somebody who's just, you know, I mean, it's a nice guy, he goes to church. That's not the idea. Or she's a very nice girl, she goes to church, her parents are pastors. You want to ask this person, you know, that you're getting married to, is this person a believer in Jesus Christ? Is this person a follower of Jesus Christ? Has this person repented of their sins and accepted Jesus as their Lord and Savior? That's the definition of the kind of person that you are able to, you know, get into a lifelong marital relationship with. So you want to ask those questions. All right, and when you've asked that, it still goes a little bit deeper. You want to have conversations around your faith, to talk about things like giving, you know, that I have here. Talk about the depth of faith. How committed are we going to be to the things of God? You know, when it comes to giving, how far can we go? Are we going to be tithers, which I assume that you plan to be? Okay, how much of our income is going to go into God's kingdom? Are we going to support any other ministries? You know, are we going to be giving, you know, regularly, periodically? How are we going to go about that when people, you know, come and say they need help? As a family, how are we going to be able to do things like that? You know, so you don't want to get into marriage and your husband or your wife is somebody who is very generous and wants to give liberally, and you begin to think that they are being wasteful. So that's very important. You want to think about that and talk about that most importantly. Okay. The next thing you want to talk about is money. This is a big one. Money is a big one. Money has broken a lot of marriages, broken a lot of relationships. There are people in relationships, in marriages, who don't even know how much their spouse is earning. So, because people don't have conversations about it, people just assume that these things will come up or that they will find out or something will happen miraculously, but they are not deliberately pursuing those things. They're not talking about them. So, you want to sit down with your spouse and talk about this. If they're already working, how much are they earning? If what's their spending habits like? Talk about spending habits. Review your debts. If you have debts, you're owing certain things or you're paying some notes or whatever it is. Talk about that. You have student loan that you haven't paid. Let the person know before the person gets involved with you that, okay, this is what, if you marry me, this is what we're going to have to deal with together. And the person already knows that. Ask about their attitude to debt. Are they debt averse? Are they, investment averse? Do they just want to be safe, make our money, save it, live our lives? I don't want to be doing any investments or taking any risks or any of those different things. Talk about mortgage. Talk about things like mortgage. Is it okay for them? Some people don't believe that that's the way to go. So you want to be on the same page, with the person that you're getting married to. That's all that is important here. It's not about right or wrong. It's just be on the same page with the person. You guys are going to be a team and you want to be, working towards the same goal. They are not have division, which is division, two visions. When one person is going one way, the other person is going the other way. This is extremely important. Now, the next thing is talk about things like life insurance. Still talking about money now. Talk about life insurance, for instance. Some people are very scared of the idea of life insurance. They feel like if I get life insurance, my wife is going to try to kill me. And I've heard that, from people. So you need to think about this and talk about it, more importantly, and have conversations around it and ask the person, what do you think about life insurance? Because this part of the world, it's protection for your family if you do that, because if anything happens to you, you don't want them to have the burden of even burial expenses in this part of the world can ruin someone's finances completely. It's different from where in places like Nigeria or or other African countries, you can just bury people anyhow. Here, there's protocols and there's a certain way that it needs to be done, and they are very expensive. So that's why people do things like life insurance, just to make sure that if somebody does pass away, they don't have to add that burden to the burden of the things that the person has left behind, or the debts that they have to pay alone, where they have mortgages and things like that. So that's why people get into things like life insurance. So you want to talk about that with your spouse and be sure that they are in agreement with you. The next one is you want to talk about divorce. As unsettling as the topic of divorce is, it is something that you need to talk about with your spouse. And as a Christian, the dimension that you are talking about this from is to be on the same page with your spouse, to understand that you guys have no room for divorce in your marriage, and settle it from the get-go. My wife and I did this from the get-go. And I spoke to you about this last week, where we had a note where we wrote things down, we asked each other questions. We settled it in that note there, and we talked about this, that divorce is off the table completely. It is off the table. We are going to fight for this marriage together. We will do everything that we can to make sure, and this was even before we got married, that we had done this, that we will do everything that is within our power to make sure that no matter how angry we get about anything, no matter how difficult something, looks or becomes, we will do our best to give the marriage a chance of surviving for ourselves and for the children that God is going to help us to bring into the world. And that's what we've been pursuing since then, and we'll continue to, by the grace of God. So you want to sit down with your partner, talk about this, and talk about, what is our approach to divorce? Is it something that one person still thinks is okay? Is it something that one person still feels, okay, we have to have a prenup agreement, just to be sure that if something does happen, I'm covered, right? If that's the idea and you don't believe in that, there's going to be a clash. So you guys need to look at this together and make sure that you agree on these things. This might be a difficult conversation, but it's an important conversation to have, okay? So we'll talk about divorce. The next thing you want to talk about is your past relationships. A lot of couples, and sometimes it's not deliberate, but sometimes couples just forget to talk about, past relationships in as much details as is necessary, such that if the person eventually finds out something about your past relationship, they don't feel hurt. They don't feel betrayed in any way because you have discussed this with them. You know, where somebody comes up later on in life and tells them, oh, do you know that your wife, me and her, this is what happened, right? And the person looks perplexed because they had no clue about that. But if you've talked about things and you've exposed, opened up, talk about everything, reveal the secrets that were in those relationships, the things that you did that you didn't like, you know, the things that happened that, you know, were no fault of yours, the ones that were your fault, you know, open up and let the person know, you know, all of these things, and have conversations around that, discuss, you know, all of these things, you know, no matter how heavy it might be, no matter the impact to have on someone else or whatever it is, it's better to do it at the early stage of your relationship before you get into marriage at all, right? And if you haven't done it and you're already in marriage, it's important to take some time, you know, to find time, you know, when the occasion arises, to talk about this thing with your spouse, and just make sure that you are not, there's nothing, no bones in your wardrobe, as they say, you know, that you don't have any skeleton in there that can be opened up one day and that will become an issue in your marriage. You don't want to break trust in your marriage because it can be very difficult to rebuild trust when it has been broken. So that is very critical to talk about. The next thing you want to talk about is your wedding. Now, the next thing you want to talk about is your wedding, and by that I mean the event itself, right? Everything you're talking about is about your marriage, but there is the event called your wedding, which is, sometimes it might be difficult if the person hasn't proposed yet, you know, to talk about the wedding, but you want to talk about it in general terms now to have an idea of what this person thinks. You know, what kind of wedding does this person prefer? This person prefer an elaborate, you know, colorful white wedding, or is this person okay with, you know, a traditional wedding and a court wedding, or, you know, what does this person think? Where would we get married? Do you want us to? Do you want it to be? Would you like to be? You might not say it as where do we, so that it doesn't look like you're trying to force a proposal, okay? But, you know, what kind of weddings do you like? You know, how do you see, you know, weddings? Do you think, you know, weddings should be elaborate? What's your ideal wedding venue? Do you like destination weddings, or you're okay with a church wedding? You know, that kind of thing. What's the budget for an ideal wedding? What do you think is okay? You know, those different conversations like that around the way, so that when that time eventually comes, it's easier for you guys. You're not running around to make decisions. There's no pressure. You already have an idea, even though you will still sit down to iron them out, but you already have an idea of, you know, the direction, so that if you have fantasies that are outrageous, you can already tell that this person is not, you know, going to buy into that, so it doesn't become an issue down the line when you spend several months or even years in that relationship and things now look like, you know, this is going to be an issue. Okay, so I hope this was a blessing to you. Thank you very much for always watching my videos. If you like the video, please press the like button so that YouTube will recommend this to other people and they can get to watch it as well. Subscribe to the channel and make sure you click on the notifications bell so that you would know anytime I have a new video out. I usually have new videos out on Sundays at 6 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time. Until I see you again next week, God bless you.